A woman accidentally gave birth to a dead baby eagle. To bring her child back to life, she went to the graveyard to dig up the dead eagle and put the dead eagle in it, then rubbed it hard to let the baby eagle absorb enough energy. Finally, burn it with the fire of Zhiang. After 49 days, the eagle can turn over and come back to life, but this technique is too evil. So before she died, she also casted the wind demon's spell to prevent it from happening. Unexpectedly, due to the heavy grudge, the baby eagle eventually turned into a grudge spirit and brought disaster to the world. This is the folk horror film Niwawa that Xiangzhu is going to talk about today. The male protagonist Xu Chuan is a game designer. In order to find inspiration for the horror game he is developing, he specially sent his staff to his house to scan the stone well. As soon as he entered the door, he saw a burnt-out kiln in the house. Out of curiosity, he decided to go in and see what was going on. As soon as he opened the kiln door, the flashlight began to flash. Then it went out automatically. But even so, he still went in. Unexpectedly, the kiln door suddenly closed automatically in the next second. Ai, who was moving equipment, heard the sound and hurried to the kiln. Strangely, there was no call for help from Achan inside. Just when he was about to leave, Achan appeared behind him without a sound. "Wow. Brother Achan, what are you doing?" "Good stuff." "How beautiful." The strange sound that just happened was actually Achan's prank. Then he handed the Niwawa he took out of the kiln to Ai. However, when Ai carefully observed the strange doll in this shape, a strange woman's voice was heard in his ear. "What are you afraid of?" This suddenly scared Ai out of his mind. At this time, he found a strange pattern engraved on the back of the Niwawa. Ai suddenly felt inexplicable fear and wanted to leave here. Ai, who had just taken a few steps, was suddenly hit in the head by the collapsed Niwawa. The blood quickly flowed to the bottom of the doll. Achan, who was on the side, hurried to get the tool and prepared to pry open the Niwawa. But when he returned to the Niwawa, he saw Yi, who had just passed out, not only stood up, but also stared at him with extremely cold eyes. Achan was so scared that he wanted to run away. He didn't expect to be caught by a ghost hand as soon as he took a step forward. Then he was forcibly dragged into the kiln by an inexplicable force. Not long after, Ai covered the wound with a hat and returned to the company. The boss was in a hurry to meet with the investor, but he didn't notice anything wrong with Ai at all. He didn't even notice that his blood footprints were everywhere on the stairs. Then the game's planner, Xu Chuang, introduced the background of the murder to the investor according to the scan results. It turned out that many years ago, the head of the Xu family suddenly went crazy and killed his family overnight. In the end, he committed suicide in a strange way. But the strange thing is that his wife Liu Xin's body was accidentally missing and has not been found until now. However, the investor is obviously not interested in this case. Just when they were going to withdraw their investments, Ai suddenly rushed outside the conference room and kept knocking on the glass, and called him to come and let everyone run. At this time, the image of Liu Xin on the screen in Ai's eyes began to bleed. Xu Chuang was also in a hurry to explain to the investor that this was a show he had specially arranged. Xu Chuang's concentration finally stabilized the investor, but Ai suddenly vomited and was sent to the hospital. In order to develop the game as soon as possible, Xu Chuang took the data collected by Ai home and continued to work overtime, including the strange doll. It was getting late, and Xu Chuang reminded his pregnant wife to go to bed early. It turned out that Mu Hua, who was a repairman in Nisu, had been working at home since he was pregnant. However, Xu Chuang's voice just fell. He saw Mu Hua appear from the other side of the room. Xu Chuang turned his head to look at his wife's work area. There was indeed no one there. At this time, Xu Chuang suddenly heard his wife calling her husband several times in a row. He subconsciously turned around. Xu Chuang just realized that he was having a nightmare. In his opinion, this must be because he was too tired. But what he didn't know was that after their husband and wife went to bed, the air conditioner in the house suddenly began to heat up automatically. Even the door of the bedroom was unknowingly opened. Mu Hua, who was asleep, woke up by the sound of the door opening. He came to the living room in a hurry. Then he picked up the mud doll and gently squeezed the gap on the doll's head. The sudden sound of his husband scared Mu Hua. At that moment, his finger was cut off by the mud doll and bleeding. Mu Hua put down the mud doll and was ready to settle accounts with Xu Chuang. But when he walked into the bedroom, he found that his husband had not woken up at all. At this time, the mud doll had already absorbed the blood and sang a strange nursery rhyme. Mu Hua immediately turned his head to look at the mud doll. Unexpectedly, in the next second he was controlled by an evil force. Even his eyes began to turn red. The next morning, Su Chuang found that Mu Hua not only bled from his left eye, but also his temper became unstable. And he, who usually does not eat internal organs, actually put a lot of liver in the porridge. However, although Su Chuang was surprised, he only took it as pregnancy, which caused his wife to suddenly change her appetite. After eating, Su Chuang went to the company to test the game. But when he brought the VR equipment into the Zhu family's mansion, he saw Liu Xin's ghost. The other party repeatedly reminded him to put the doll back. However, Su Chuang was not afraid of Liu Xin. He only felt that he had never been involved in this game. He thought his colleague had touched his game, but when his colleague learned about the situation, he thought that Su Chuang might have really met a ghost, because no one had ever changed the game except for him. And the aunt who had entered the mansion was still in the hospital. Chang is still missing. At this time, Mu Hua, who was repairing the mud doll at home, realized that the air conditioner had been automatically heated and thought that the air conditioner was broken. Fortunately, he turned it off with a remote control. However, when he was about to continue working, he found that the mud doll on the desk in the office had turned into the mud doll. Then he heard the sound of the air conditioner. Mu Hua, who was terrified, wanted to leave the office immediately. Unexpectedly, as soon as he ran to the door was automatically closed. The next second, a strange sound came from his ear. Mu Hua almost instinctively wanted to resist the temptation, but when he accidentally looked in the mirror, he saw himself in the mirror holding the mud doll. Mu Hua subconsciously lowered his head and found that the mud doll had appeared in his arms at some point, and his other hand was holding the knife, and under his control, he cut a wound on his chest with the knife and fed the mud doll in his arms with his own blood. Then he mixed the rest of the blood in the mud as the material for repairing the mud doll. During the repair process, Mu Hua also used a tool to start scraping the back of the mud doll. When Su Chuang came home, the back of the mud doll had been wiped off, and Mu Hua had already gone to bed early, because he didn't want to disturb his wife's rest, so Su Chuang didn't find anything wrong with Mu Hua. But every time he lay in bed, he saw that the air conditioner was automatically warming up. He was going to turn off the air conditioner with a remote control, but it didn't work at all. What surprised him even more was that the sleepy Mu Hua suddenly sat up, accusing him of disturbing his rest. Then he kept scratching his belly, saying that he was very uncomfortable. Su Chuang hurriedly ran to his wife and found that not only was Mu Hua's face haggard, but also a bruise on his stomach. He thought that Mu Hua had become like this, so in order to help his wife find a way to get rid of the pressure, Su Chuang didn't even forget to take the time to search for related topics when he was at work. Fortunately, the company's boss was still Su Chuang's schoolmate, so after learning about his experience, not only did he not blame him for opening a small business, but also advised him to spend more time with his wife as a passerby. In the end, he gave him a peace talisman in order to wish them a successful marriage. Under the guidance of Su Chuang was indeed much more at ease, so he went back to work and continued to do game research. In order to make the game more realistic, Su Chuang clicked on Shu's brother's video again. This is how he found the mark on the back of the mud doll. It's a pity that the video was not clear enough, so he couldn't see the content of the talisman clearly. At this time, the newly discharged Yi suddenly called, reminding Su Chuang to hand the mud doll to the mage as soon as possible. But when they talked on the phone, the signal suddenly became extremely poor, so Su Chuang didn't hear Yi at all. However, out of concern for his colleague, Su Chuang came directly to Yi's house after work to visit him. But unexpectedly, when he came to Yi's house, Mu Hua in the house picked up a toy doll and cut his palm with a knife, smearing the blood on the toy doll. At this time, Yi was still shouting for help and kept nagging at the mud doll, but as Mu Hua suddenly broke the toy doll's arm, Yi's arm was also broken. And when Mu Hua put the doll in his arms and twisted his head, Yi also used another arm to break his neck and died in front of Su Chuang. The fetus absorbed the soul in the corpse. It became evil spirit. She also controlled her to kill her husband. In order to prevent the evil spirit from continuing to harm people, wrote a spell to seal the evil spirit. In order to atone for his sin, he also sealed himself and the mud doll together in the kiln. After learning about the cause and effect of the incident, Shen and Liu Xin went to Liu Xin's house to look for her body. But at this time, Mu Hua came to stop him under the control of Li Gui. He also locked Ah Shen in the kiln and almost burned him to death. Fortunately, Ah Shen had given his exorcism token to Shu Chuan in advance and suppressed the evil spirit temporarily. Not long after, Ah Shen, who found Liu Xin's body, wrote a complete spell and was ready to seal the evil spirit again in Liu Xin's hole. But unexpectedly, he failed. Shen finally understood at this moment that the evil spirit chose to come back to Mu Hua and wanted to use the fetus in his belly to be reborn. In order to prevent the evil spirit from coming to the world, Ah Shen could only choose to sacrifice Mu Hua and the child, but he was stopped by Shu Chuan. As a man, he had to protect his wife and child. He only saw Shu Chuan dropping his own blood on the mud doll and wanted to be reborn by the evil spirit. When Ah Shen saw it, he immediately put the spell on Shu Chuan's back. Although he successfully sealed the evil spirit, it cost Shu Chuan his life. Not long after, Mu Hua finally gave birth to the child. But that day, he received a VR game prepared by Shu Chuan before he died. It turned out that Shu Chuan was busy with work and didn't have time to accompany his wife, so he recorded his information into the game. In this way, he was able to accompany his wife in another way. The mud doll connected the two tragedies and told the weight of love and sacrifice. Liu Xin's desperate father and son is the helpless obsession of the mother with the child. The hero's relentless is the husband's protection of his wife, is the father's selfless dedication to the child. Compared with the visual fear brought by the evil spirit, the regret of parting with death, the family that is forced to be missing is the most heart-wrenching place. Okay, that's all for today's story.